Hi, I'm Alex Osmond, and in this video we're going to be discussing a particular chapter out of my book published by Sage called Academic Writing and Grammar for Students, which is a book that focuses very specifically on kind of academic writing, so students learn the conventions of it and learn good practice around it and the kind of basic grammatical concepts that I think they need to know to write good assignments and essays. So the chapter we're looking at is the 6th chapter. It's called Clarity and Conciseness. So what we're kind of talking about in this chapter, or what I'm talking about, is the idea that we need to write, we need to make our points clearly, so our readers understand exactly what we mean, exactly what we're saying, rather than making our points over complex or over formal. We need to write in a very simple, clear way. And conciseness is a slightly different but related idea that the fewer words we use to make our points, the better it proves that we have real control over what we're writing. And again, it shows that we're very confident in our points, and it keeps your word count low, so you can talk more about your subject rather than kind of finding that you've written far too much, which is, as I'm sure many students will agree, is quite a common problem. So what I'm going to do is actually talk through a couple of specific things from this chapter, kind of a few specific ways in which we can improve, a few specific issues related to clarity and conciseness. So I'm going to start doing that now. So in this chapter there's kind of a section that deals with what I've called meaningless modifiers. There's more detail in the book, but a modifier is a word or phrase that adds more information to a sentence. Okay, and what the 3 examples I have, there are other examples, very common words, very, really, and extremely. Okay, we use them all the time in speech and in other kinds of writing. But if you actually think about it, they don't actually add a lot of specific information to a sentence. And in academic writing, we need to be very specific and clear. It's this idea of clarity. To say that something has been very successful, or really successful, it doesn't actually give the reader that much information. So I give specific examples on how to do this in the book with various different sentences, but the point I'm trying to make now is that you'd be better off perhaps using a statistic to show, to give some measure of how much more successful a particular initiative has been, or something like that. So the next thing I just wanted to mention, that again is kind of a common issue and something we need to be aware of. Words like this, that, and those, which obviously refer to other things, other words in a sentence or phrase or paragraph, and you'd be surprised how often it's actually not clear which other part of a sentence these words are referring to. So what you want to do when you're kind of writing your essay is try and, when you read over it, and imagine that you're one of your readers, so you're kind of approaching this work for the first time, and just try and think, am I very clear what this word this is referring to elsewhere in the sentence, or what the word those is referring to? And if there's any doubt, repeat that word, make sure it's clear what these words are actually referring to. Okay, so that's another thing that we have to be aware of, and another kind of issue that I think comes up quite a lot. So here, again, sort of related, and it's all linked to this idea of conciseness and clarity. I have 3 phrases, okay? And what you'll actually find is that they can all be replaced by one word that means exactly the same thing as each of these phrases does. There's quite a few more phrases like this, so there is a bigger list that I provide in the book, but I've just picked out these 3 to show you what I mean. So the first one, at this moment in time, can always, so try this with a sentence, write a sentence with the phrase at this moment in time in it. can always be replaced by the word now. Okay? Try it. Write a sentence and you'll see that that always works. So again, you've just shaved quite a few words out of your essay, which gives you more words to talk about the topic at hand. And again, it just shows you're being careful and efficient with language. So the second phrase, in the event that. Try it. This can always be replaced in a sentence by the word if. Okay? So again, if you look at a sentence with the phrase in the event that, you will always be able to replace it with if. And this is also linked to the idea of, rather than writing deliberately kind of over-formal or over-complex phrases, it's better just to write the simple version, as long as it is academically appropriate and not slang or colloquial language, that kind of thing. It's better to do it this way. Okay, so finally, because of the fact that can always be replaced simply with the word because. Okay, does exactly the same thing in the sentence. Try it and you'll see what I mean. Okay, and there's lots of other phrases where the same thing actually applies and one word works just as well as what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So again, slightly different example here, slightly different idea. We have a full sentence. So let's imagine this is a sentence in an essay. And again, this is an example from the book. So the sentence is, the patient died of a fatal dose of morphine. Okay, now, words in English or any language have specific definitions. They mean certain things. And that's actually very useful because it means we can use them carefully. And the problem with this first sentence is that the word fatal, this word fatal here, means that it kills you, right? It's lethal, it kills you, which means that we don't need to also use this word died, because if the dose of this morphine, of this drug, is fatal, then we know it's killed the patient. Okay? So again, it just shows that you're not being as efficient as you can be, or as clear as you can be with your use of language. So I've provided one way of rectifying this by writing, the patient was given a fatal dose of morphine. Okay, so we know they were given this dose of morphine, and we know it was fatal, so we know that it killed the patient. And that's just an example of how we can be efficient and clear with our language and prove to the people marking our work that we're approaching things in that clear, efficient, effective way. Which kind of leads me neatly on to this last point I want to make. A couple of things that I do in the book that I hope you find useful. The first thing is that throughout the book I have boxes called What Your Tutors Say. And what I've done there is I've approached a whole host of academics and tutors from lots of different subjects, huge variety of subjects, and asked them to give me some of their thoughts on specific topics that are addressed within the book. So one from this chapter on clarity and conciseness is a quote from a colleague of mine, Emily, and she's said, clear writing is clear thinking. And I love this because I think it so well sums up the aim of this chapter and this book and academic writing as a whole. Okay? If you're writing clearly, then that means that you are thinking clearly. If your tutor is marking your essay and it's written very clearly and effectively and efficiently, and so that kind of builds on the examples we've just looked at, they will understand that you are thinking clearly in this academic way about a particular topic. The other thing that I do throughout the book is I have boxes called key point boxes, key points. And what I do there is I kind of highlight specific things that I really think it's important that you take away from the book and that you understand and get to grips with. So one of them, which I've kind of shortened a bit here, is try to avoid repetition, but don't try so hard that you end up using strange or rare words. And this kind of comes from something that happened to me, where I was looking at a student's piece of work, and her writing was getting stranger and stranger throughout the essay, and I asked why. And what she'd done was, with the best of intentions, to try and avoid repeating certain words too many times, which is another topic in the book, she'd actually used a thesaurus to find, you know, a different way of saying the same word every time. And of course, you know, the more she did this, the more bizarre these words got, and some of them were quite archaic, which basically means they mean a certain thing, but they're so old now that they're not really used, and they seem very strange. Okay, so again, this is one of the key points I have in the book. There are lots of them, and they all try and kind of sum up an idea that I think you should, you know, become comfortable with. So we've just talked about the chapter on clarity and conciseness. There are, you know, obviously lots of other chapters in the book dealing with referencing, critical thinking, proofreading, you know, the basic grammar ideas that you'll need to kind of write well in an academic sense. We also have the basic conventions of academic writing, and, you know, a chapter on kind of common mistakes that brings together various different things that, again, I think you should learn to avoid and understand why they happen, based on my experience seeing lots and lots of essays from various subjects.